especially looking forward to Jonathan Martinez. There was two guys on this fight, both with the nickname Dragon. One of you are loyal followers here on Twitter. Shouted out Nighthawk and Dragon from Step Brothers. I had a whole thing ready for you, but because I don't, I'm just going to take Marvin Vettori. Hello and welcome to Monkey Knife Fights UFC preview for UFC Vegas 41. Folks, we're talking UFC. That means we got our guy AJ Schullo joining us here today. AJ, how are you today?
Been fantastic, man. Here to talk about UFC Vegas 41. There's some intriguing fights on this card. Yeah, banger of a headliner, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, quite literally a banger of a headliner. Two guys that Israel Adesanya, following him on Twitter, obviously, and just seeing him comment this week, just wishes his sons good luck this coming Saturday night. Doesn't care who wins, but wants to see a good fight. And AJ, I think we're going to be in for a good fight. And one of the things that I think that we really got to look out for is Marvin Vettori in this fight and his more on Monkey Knife Fight, pardon me. He's secured 15 takedowns through his last two fights. He took Israel Adesanya to distance. He's got the cardio to go that far. Costa has only been past the third round once and carries that ton of muscle mass. Yes, that muscle mass has resulted in knockout wins, but we've also seen the fatigue side of it. I think Vettori is going to put the pace on him, take him down, and get a whole heck of a lot of strikes, and really put a different kind of beating on Costa that we haven't seen, where Adesanya was dancing around him. I think Vettori is just going to be too quick with his transitional game, get him to the mat really quick, and just land some pretty mean strikes. And as the fight goes on, I see Vettori getting stronger, and Costa. Hey, see that one? Costa slowing down. So that's how I see that one going. Paulo Costa slowing down. Vettori with the late finish. AJ, what's your read on that fight?
Yeah, I think Vettori is rightfully favored here. I trust him much more in 5 rounds. Not that he's a cardio machine, but at least he's been there and done that more than once, whereas Costa, he has slowed down, even in 3-round fights against Romero, going back a couple of years now. So there's also just less red flags on Vettori. Going back and looking at Costa's fight without Adesanya, he just fought with such a perplexing game plan, just tried to stand at range with Israel, the best kickboxer in the division, when his game plan should have been to crash the pocket and do damage on the inside. He just seemed totally stuck at range, just didn't know how to close effectively. This is a much more favorable matchup for him against Vettori. But as you alluded to, Vettori's a more well-rounded fighter, the better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. He's the fighter more likely to get takedowns. So I think he's the rightful favorite here. In terms of the Monkey Knife Fight side of things, I actually do like the more and more on both. Marvin Vettori, even though 118.5 strikes is a lot, Costa's very, very hittable defensively, absorbs 6.70 significant strikes per minute. This fight is projected to go about 22 and a half minutes. And one thing I like about Vettori is he is one of these guys that you don't just have to rely on his significant strikes to get the strike count, right? He landed a bunch of non-significant strikes against Israel Adesanya. He will be busy in the clinch. He will be busy on the ground. Kevin Whalen, for instance, landed 24 significant strikes in 5 rounds, but get this, he landed 152 total strikes because all of his pitter patter from ground and pound. And on the flip side, with Costa, he fights at a crazy high pace, lands 7.03 significant strikes per minute. Vettori is solid defensively, but he is still moderately hittable. Against Jack Hermanson, Vettori absorbed 122 significant strikes in 5 rounds. Again, Costa will come forward. He is generally durable. He's coming off of his first knockout loss. But the good thing for him is Vettori hasn't historically shown to be a big puncher. So I do think we could see this fight carry on for a bit. Both guys could land in volume. Both guys are not the most defensively responsible. And I think that we see more and more here.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on the more and more read, and you brought up the Vettori side of things, and that's what I was alluding to. I just think it's going to be the ground and pound pitter patter shots that'll really will pay dividends in this fight, because Paulo Costa, I believe his takedown defense is pretty solid, right around 80%. But when Marvin Vettori is pushing that pace on you for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, now 15 minutes, now you got to go and deal with them into the 4th round, in the championship rounds, the main event rounds. I don't think Paulo Costa, from what I've seen, is going to be able to keep up with that pace. He comes out firing, no doubt. And I think if Vettori can just avoid that Hellenic right hand, like that iron-aged right hand that will just put anyone's lights out, I think he'll be okay. And I think, he's just got the more paths to victory. So I'm riding with you on the more and the more. I think Costa's going to be able to touch Vettori up too. But I just think this is Marvin Vettori's moment to really cement himself as the one guy in the middleweight division that we've seen that can go, hey, Israel, I'm number 2 in this division.
Yeah, I think either Vettori or Whitaker for sure. I actually think I would favor Whitaker. I do think that your point though is very sound that Vettori should look to make to prove that point rather that he is the second best. There's interviews of him even saying that Adesanya didn't beat him necessarily because he's more skilled, but because he fought a smarter game plan. So gotta love Vettori's confidence. Costa's been on the record and said some things as well. So when these two worlds collide, it should create for a fun scrap.
Yeah, I do have Robert Whitaker as my number one title contender too. But Vettori, as I said, right, he's got a chance to make a case for himself on Saturday night with the emphatic stoppage to get that number 3 against Adesanya. And you never really know with Robert Whitaker how active he is. But yeah, the Grim Reaper is definitely one to watch, folks. There's our selections. We're riding with the more and more, AJ and I together, forever best friends. And scroll down, hit submit, and you're in to win. Now, the co-main event. This should be a fun one. Grant Dawson has looked, well, pretty darn good. Ricky Glenn, on the other hand, has looked okay. Dawson's undefeated inside the octagon. He averages nearly 3.5 takedowns per 15 minutes of octagon time. He's 5 years younger. He's more explosive, and I think he's got more paths to victory in this fight. Again, I think we could see some takedown and some pitter-patter. Dennis Bermudez was actually able to take down Glenn 6 times in that fight. I don't know how Glenn won that fight when I went back and rewatched it on the split decision, but hey, so I'm not a judge. But judging this fight, I got to go with Grant Dawson. I like the more for Grant Dawson. I like the less for Rick Glenn. I don't think he can get off the 56 strikes.
Yeah, very fair points. I think Dawson is the rightful favorite. I think he's the better athlete. I think he's got more upside with takedowns and control here. And I think he could have even success at distance. I think the one criticism that Dawson has had throughout his career is his boxing. But he's an improving boxer. Like, he trains at Glory MMA Fitness with James Krause, who's obviously a tremendous coach, very young fighter, ever improving. He should beat Glenn, but I do have a lot of respect for Glenn's. Like, he's basically like a workman fighter. He's very tough. He'll push the pace. He has good cardio, obviously, as evidenced by that Gavin Tucker fight. I'm with you on the more for Dawson. Glenn is very hittable defensively, absorbs 4.27 significant strikes per minute. He also stands heavy on his lead leg, and I know Dawson likes to throw leg kicks, so that should be he could bink in some distance strikes there for sure. But also, similar to Vettori that we talked about, Dawson is very active with his strikes from the clinch and from in top position. Looking back at his fight with Nad Narimani, Dawson only landed 53 significant strikes. However, he landed 136 total strikes. So yeah, a little over 80 more non-significant strikes there. And this fight is projected to, probably go 15 minutes. So I have a lot of respect for both guys' toughness, durability. Glenn's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. So while Dawson is very good on the ground, I think there's a chance that Glenn is able to survive. And I'm actually disagree with you on the Glenn. I do think he goes higher. And it's more so to do with his pace. Not that Dawson is super hittable, but Glenn does land 4.39 significant strikes per minute. I do think he'll be the type of guy that'll, walk Dawson down. Dawson doesn't exactly throw with a ton of power. So Glenn really shouldn't be too terrified of any counters coming back. And yeah, I do like more and more. I do think this fight will play out. And I think it is one that Dawson should get his hand raised in.
Yeah, the one thing that's really keeping me from the reason why I'm riding with the less on Glenn is simply because Dawson absorbing obviously rate less than 2.5 significant strikes per minute. So he knows decently enough how to get out of the way. But a lot of that is mainly because he's on top for such a long period of times, obviously averaging nearly 4 takedowns per the 15 minutes of octagon time. But I think if Glenn tries to walk him down, from what I've seen from Dawson, the way he pursues the takedown, I've seen that lack of takedown defense in Glenn. I mean, it's not so much a lack of a takedown defense. I believe he's got like a 66% takedown defense. Yeah, 66% takedown defense. I've seen him taken down. I've seen it happen before, and I think Grant Dawson is that high enough caliber to take him down and control the fight. So I'm going to go with the more and the less for the more on Dawson, less on Glenn. AJ, he's riding with the more and the more. Folks, scroll down, hit submit, and you're in to win. AJ, what other fights would you like to take a peek at today?
Yeah, there's a very fun scrap earlier on the prelims between Jai Herbert and Kama Worthy. I think that Yeah, it's a really, really good one. And you know, we get some of these gems on the prelims from time to time. And this is one where I think that there's probably going to be a finish. Both guys historically have shown very questionable durability. Worthy, I guess, most recently has been getting knocked out in the first round in back-to-back fights. But even Jai Herbert, right? You know, he got knocked out cold by Francisco Trinaldo in his debut. He also looked to be knocked out by Moicano there from ground and pound prior to the choke. And then even going back to the regional career of Herbert, he was knocked out there cold by Rice McKee. So both guys have been knocked out several times, and both guys are still offensively very strong. I do think that Worthy carries power. Herbert carries power as well. It's a fight where I favor Herbert because I think he's a bit better at range. I think he's more agile, a bit longer as well. But even though that these totals are a bit on the lower side, I'm actually going to go with less and less because I think we see a quick finish, because I think that both guys are going to struggle to take the power of each other. And so I think it could just be a fight where one big shot from either guy just ends it right away. So, and considering they both have those reputations of finishing in fights early, I'm going to take with the less and less here.
Yeah, one of the most exciting things to look at going into a fight is that finishing percentage, right? And if you look at Jai Herbert in the UFC, he's been finished twice. Kama Worthy, 3 out of his 4 UFC appearances have ended via knockout. So this should be a fun one. And yeah, I mean, obviously you're on to something with that less and less, right? Like just 26 and a half strikes for Kama Worthy. We don't usually see that when you've been on the show a bunch of times. It's one of the lower totals we've seen. But again, sometimes that's just the read. And I think you're right. Herbert's got the longer reach. I think he'll be able to touch him up. And I think one of these guys is going to drop. And man, I guess in these scenarios, I like to go with the younger guy. I like to go with the guy with the more range and the guy that, as you said, that I've seen been able to show to keep the range, and eventually the guy that won't eat the big shot. And I think that's more to Jai Herbert, but Kama Worthy is a scary, scary dude. So I'm with you on the less and less in that one, AJ. And then Jason, may you please pull up the ladies on the card here on the main event: Jessica Rose Clark versus Jocelyn Edwards. Less and less from both of us, Mr. Jason Rubin. Jessica Rose Clark versus Jocelyn Edwards. Now, this one, folks, this one could be a long one. This Jocelyn Edwards averages a decision in her 2 UFC appearances. Both fights have gone decision, and Jessica Rose Clark has gone to decision in all but one. Both these ladies land over 4 significant strikes per minute, and their defense absorb right around 4 significant strikes. So I think you know where I'm going with this. I like these ladies to stand in front of each other and see who's tougher. I like the more and the more. AJ, what's your read on this one?
Yeah, I like the more and more as well. Edwards has a 6-inch reach advantage here, but Rose Clark to me is still the better technical striker on the feet. I think she could have a lot of success with low kicks at range. You know, Edwards really struggled with them. And like you said, not very good defensively. 46% defense for Edwards. Rose Clark is a bit more defensively sound, but she has shown to take a lot of strikes in the past, like against Pani Kianzad. She absorbed 98. Rose Clark only lands 1.01 takedowns per 15 minutes. So I definitely think you're right in that there's a chance that this fight takes place on the feet for 15 minutes, in which case there could be a lot of volume thrown and landed on both sides. I like the more and more as well here. I think that Rose Clark is rightfully the favorite as well.
Boom. Let's go. I love it. Confidence in and out, in and out. Well, one more thing that we must talk about before we look at any other fights, just because it's the biggest knockout king. Well, we've had in a while. It's $100 from a rollover prize from last weekend. That's what happens when you combine 2 words, folks. It doesn't sound like English. First up, for me, I was actually looking forward to Jonathan Martinez. There was 2 guys on this fight, both with the nickname Dragon. One of you are loyal followers here on Twitter. Shouted out Nighthawk and Dragon from Step Brothers. I had a whole thing ready for you, but because I don't, I'm just going to take Marvin Vettori. We talked about it. I think it's going to be those 4th and 5th rounds. I do not trust Paulo Costa's defense to hold up, and I think Vettori's got that. Dude, he's a bit of a psycho. Like he's like in those interviews, he's scary. I would not want to get locked in the octagon with any UFC fighter, but Marvin Vettori is like on that list where I don't think he'll knock me out in one punch, and it would be worse than being in there with Francis Ngannou, who would just murder me in half a second. So I'm going to take Marvin Vettori and my knockout kings, and I'm scared of him. That's the bottom line.
That's completely fair. For me, I'm going to go with Jai Herbert. Like we talked about, it's a fight where probably a knockout happens. The vast majority of the fights that feature worthy of Herbert ended in a knockout. And yeah, I think Herbert is going to be the guy that gets the better of the exchanges. Like we talked about, the range, the length, and the better footwork. So I like Jai Herbert as one of my knockout kings.
Well, I'm not sure if you're going to agree with me on this one. So my third and final pick would be Grant Dawson in this scenario, just because I see the takedowns playing out and I see the later finish from more of a referee stoppage from just pouring on the pressure. He has 3 finishes in his last 4 fights, and I like him to make it 4 or 5 on the eve of my birthday. So let's go, Grant Dawson. Let's go blow out some birthday candles, baby. Put that guy's candles out.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
That's awesome, man. And you know what? I could give analysis on here, but it doesn't matter because birthday luck is compels everything. It trumps everything. So I definitely can see where you're coming from. He's coming off a knockout loss with 1 second left. Glenn is very historically durable, but it could happen. It's possible. Glenn has been hurt. He got hurt by Aguilar. It's a legit possibility. For me, I'm going to actually pivot over to Jung Young Park, actually, a fight that we didn't talk about. Park is facing Gregory Rodriguez, who's been knocked out in 2 of his 3 fights, 2 of his 3 losses. And Park will come to fight. He's not the biggest puncher in the division, but he does walk forward. He does throw in high volume. And I think if he gets in the inside of Rodriguez, he'll definitely have a chance to knock him out. So, yeah, I like Jung Young Park. I like to target these guys that have been knocked out more than once in the past. And I think that Park, once again, has another chance to put him out.
Do you see that fight playing out on the feet? Because when I was looking at the Parker Rodriguez fight, one of the things I was looking at was both of them secure some pretty solid takedowns. I believe one of them secures about 2 per 15 minutes. The other one secures 3. So who would you give to in the ground game? Or do you just see these guys being like, okay, I respect your ground game. I don't want to grapple with you. I don't want to grapple with you. Let's just go toe to toe and let the dominoes fall.
I think that's a good point. I think that it could go to the ground. I think it probably does at one point. I think Rodriguez is the better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. This guy's like very decorated in submission grappling and that stuff. But more so where I'm coming from with Park is like, if I'm picturing Park winning this fight, I think there's a decent chance it's by knockout. It's because he's able to do some damage on the feet. And I do think that there's some credence to his improvements, right? He didn't look good on the ground defending against Hernandez in his debut, but since then, like you said, he's been stringing together some fights where he's landed some takedowns and to Marc-Andre Barrio too, a very tough guy. So yeah, I think it could go to the ground, but more so with Park, I would hope that he would get this knockout if he wants to keep it upright, do some damage on the feet and get it done that way.
Yeah. I really like that read there. And I was curious to ask you that because when I was looking at it, I kind of figured, you know what, this could be one of those bets where it's just like these 2 guys are both pretty solid. I see, great records, only a few losses. And one of the things was I'm just looking the over 1.5 rounds. I think it's going to go long, right? So that was just one of the things that I was curious to pick your brain about was just how you saw it playing out, obviously, for the reasons I said, between the ground game and or their striking. One more fight that I want to touch on is our guy, Bruce Leroy, one of the most aggravating fighters ever on Tough. But man, oh man, was he entertaining. Now he's going into his 10th year, AJ. Can you believe that? In the UFC? First fights in 2011, now 2021. And he's taken on Sungwoo Choi, the Sting, as he's known. Folks, I like this one to be one of those fights that goes a little longer. But both these guys have sneakily good defense and are decently hard to hit. But at the end of the day, I think these guys might end up throwing caution to the wind. And this one you could see more and more on Monkey Knife Fight just because I expect this one to start slow, but slowly these guys feel each other out and really amp up the volume of strikes as the fight goes on. AJ, what's your read on this one?
Yeah, I think it plays out. Like Caceres, he's been finished in the past, but it's mostly been due to submission grappling. And Choi isn't really he's not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. So I think we see a fight contested on the feet where I think that's Choi's rightful favorite. I think he's more technical. I think he throws with more power. I think he has better defense. And yeah, he does throw in decent volume. He's landed 95 significant strikes in one of his UFC wins. He's coming off of a knockout win against DeRosa. But generally, when these fights are contested on the feet, he's got a high work rate. And Caceres does too. 4.10 significant strikes landed per minute. Choi, for as good as he is offensively, defensively, his striking defense is 46%, not great. So yeah, I do like your read there. I think we see them more and more. I think we see an extended fight here, and I do think it's a fight where Choi probably gets the nod on the judges' scorecards.
Yeah, I'm actually completely with you on every single read that you just made there. That makes me feel really good about myself. So nice. Thanks, AJ. Birthday luck coming in. And just so everyone knows, Alex Caceres is Bruce Leroy. That's his nickname for everyone who was confused. So the guy on the right of your screen was the man I was referring to. It's not a derogatory term. That is actually his nickname. He calls himself a Bruce Leroy. And he's pretty fun to watch in the octagon, folks. AJ, any other fights that you want to zero in on? I've given a couple picks. You've given a couple picks. We talked about the Knockout Kings. Or should we just wait for Saturday night and see how it plays out?
We could talk about one more. I mean, there's I don't think it's up yet, but I would like to just kind of like gloss over it. Mason Jones versus David Anama. Just to quickly just like let the viewers know, this is a fight that recently got put together. It was originally going to be a rematch between Alan Patrick and Mason Jones. Patrick pulled out. There we go. Thank you, Jason. And in steps Anama. Now, Anama is a guy that is making his debut. But I looked back on tape. He's solid, man. He's like a long rangey guy. He's got some power, very physically strong, athletic guy, and another Glory MMA and fitness guy. So keep an eye on this one, folks. This is going to be a really entertaining scrap. Mason Jones always comes to fight. That bout that he had with Mike Davis was must-see TV. Go back and rewatch it if you don't know what I'm talking about. And I think that these two are going to stand and bang. Both guys are very durable. I think we see a really competitive scrap here. And this is one where I know that Onama's coming in here on short notice, but don't count this guy out. He's a serious prospect.
Wow. You got me like all hyped up for goosebumps for this one. Where is this coming into on the card? Was this the card that's replacing the Aaron Phillips Jonathan Martinez fight on the prelims, or is this coming in sliding into the main card? Where can the viewers watch this fight? Is just what I'm trying to get to, because the UFC doesn't even have this fight listed on their website yet. Thank you, Jason, coming from the background. And AJ, I just got to pick your brain. Who do you like in that fight, man? I mean, you just hyped me up so much. You can't just leave me hanging like that. Come on now. Give the viewers a little tease.
Yeah, I got to still favor Jones because I think he's a better submission grappler. He's obviously the more prepared fighter, more tested, more proven, that sort of thing. But again, it's not one where I would say want to bet Jones is like a 6-1 favorite or whatever he is right now. I think that's just a little bit too rich for me in terms of placing a bet. So prediction wise, I'm going to side with Jones. But a betting perspective, I don't really like his money line here, despite all the things that he has going for him in general, in terms of like the prep and the provenness.
Yeah, the value just isn't there. You want a good ROI, you make sure you follow ajmma.com, and he'll get you those ROIs that we love to see in this business. Folks, that is AJ MMA, AJ Schullo. As I said, get on ajmma.com. The man breaks down all the picks, talks UFC, talks Bellator. He does it all. Monkey knife fighter, one of the best monkey knife fighters I know. Folks, I'm Connor Roundtree, and we'll see you again next week for a big UFC card. And man, oh man, am I excited. AJ, any final thoughts going into next week's card? Yeah, exactly.
My mind is blown looking at that card. We got an earlier start time. We got a 6-fight main card, and we got 2 title fights, man. So really looking forward to that. And then another thing too, if that wasn't enough pay-per-view, we got a pay-per-view right after that. So 267, 268. Let's get it.
Yeah, and it will be on Halloween Eve. Jan Blachowicz going up against Glover Teixeira, Piotr Jan versus the Sandman Corey Sandhagen, and Islam Makhachev versus Dan Hooker. Holy moly, folks. I'll be in costume to break that one down next week. We'll see what AJ can come up with. Folks, thank you so much for joining us on Monkey Knife Fights UFC show. I'm Connor Roundtree. That's AJ Schullo. Remember to hit it hard.